So today I'll be sharing about what does karma mean? It means in Hebrew, midah kneged midah, trait for trait. So if there's a disconnection, there's going to be a disconnection. It's like an echo. So it's not important to think about that a boomerang, like you throw it out there, it comes back to you. It's more like a mirror. Like you're going to have to see clearly at some point. And if you're not seeing clearly, then things will be revealed so that you see from that angle. And there's many more details on a personal level for each one of us, what that means in terms of perception, actions, perception including thoughts and interpretations, and then words. So karmas could be things like temporary satiation, external need or lack, attachments, baggage, themes. Even a theme could be a karma, like just to keep having it go like a pattern, right? In Sanskrit, they call it samsara. Like it's when we're not able to make choices, we're just making decisions. It's like you're given two things, you don't even get to make a choice of if you're going to move in a direction, what you want to do, for example. So seeds are planted for this lifetime, which are everything from desires, needs, and suffering. And it's kind of where we don't feel free. And you might want to take appropriate action, and then there's a rectification that happens. So there's like only someone specific, for example, that could solve it, or only one thing specific. You're already not able to make a choice. You're making a decision, yes or no. It's not really like from the self. So it's like when there's only one person in the role that could fulfill the belief, then we don't identify with the one that we're projecting, for example. Anyway, so what is self-actualization? It's when the growth processes and necessary healing reach a certain point. Every part of our being can find expression. It's a wholeness. It's a totally genuinely being involved. And children are very good at that. And some of us lose it. Some of us worship it. Some of us, look for it in others. There's all different ways if we can or we can't, and our responses. So there's a blueprint with which we came into carnation that can be actualized, that would be actualized. So these are some ways that I can say, like, just to make it real, and you might identify. So aligning with the holy, even when I'm in the tuma, which is called the depths of, or when I'm in the depths of tuma. Tuma is like the ritual impurity. It's like we've been contaminated in some way. And everybody knows what that feels like. Unfortunately, when someone's raped and they end up taking a shower, scrubbing to get it, or just like people taking sedatives to clean the mind. They don't want to think these thoughts, or even with words, just like how it feels, the regret to say bad things, Anyway, so aligning with the holy, then mindfulness of death and not being in the body, but we're clearly here alive in the body if we're negotiating this conversation, which is more like a monologue, but I'm sharing, and you're hopefully inside yourself aware that your process of hearing me and thinking and absorbing is part of life. Building castles from the rubble, loving, accepting myself more with each rejection, learning not to hide my singing and dancing only privately. That's a big one in my life I'm still working on. Forgiveness and mercy, which is choosing, despite even if there's abuse or violations. And this doesn't mean that we give our mercy to the other. Like self-actualization doesn't mean I'm merciful for that one while they abuse me. It means there's mercy. Like there's a level of, it's not okay with me. And I understand, what they're in hurt, they're in pain, and forgiveness for them doesn't mean just, we don't have to hold the grudge, keep reminding them. Kind of like I'm either not going to interact with the information is that they're not in a safe state of being in a phase in life, or if that day they didn't eat enough, for example, or sleep enough, and so they're away, we can forgive them for their humanity. Even if they violated a little with boundaries, privacy, embarrassing, name calling, these are instances that we can choose forgiveness and mercy. Again, this doesn't mean that if somebody is repeatedly, it's in other words, if you're choosing forgiveness and mercy to them, not yourself, that's not really forgiveness and mercy. So anyway, finding our wholeness in each loss. And this for me is very related with loving and accepting myself more with each rejection. And then allowing power to flow through me via surrender and humility rather than filling up and then containing it, like my power. Rather letting it dissolve. This is power. And then there's no one like holding on to the power. We share it freely. It's flowing, right? We surrender and we're humble in that. And actually there's a sense of like what I call like confidence often, but it's the finding of joy through surpassing a karma, through surpassing a limited pattern, an escapism. When we get overwhelmed, the muscle memory, you call it like neurohabit response to overwhelm. So this is confidence, and then believing in people's goodness even after this cruelty. And this is related to forgiveness and mercy. In the same way that we make mistakes, we've got to have this karma. Like if we're always the good one, and even though we make mistakes that we would otherwise have huge grudges against others, we got to realize maybe even when we can be cruel, we're actually still good. And we did a cruel action, had a cruel thought or judgment, or said a cruel word. And that is a sense of related to the surrender. It's like we get control from freedom from helplessness. So we also get appreciation from freedom from worthlessness. So we can feel like we're worthy. We're not making ourselves so small that we're only the pattern or only the need, or when we satisfy someone's need, that's what gives us value. It's not true. So we can appreciate the freedom from feeling our worth is dependent, and also our freedom from helplessness, that we don't get to make choices, or that if we're like kind of lost by somebody, like they let go of us or we're rejected, pushed away, we can get control through freedom from the helplessness that we are rejected, we are worthless. It's not worthless, sorry, too much, and so on. So this is like embracing that we're not punishable, we're actually innocent and we make mistakes, but then everyone else gets that too. That's what karma is. It's like the midah kneged midah, like the mirror, the rectification. In other words, we also have to accept there's a mundane quality in relationships that grows naturally into fidelity, which is mutual respect. And that's important, that we can forgive each other. Because if someone's always kind of the taskmaster, it's very hard for the person to forgive themselves, and they're going to develop all the coping mechanisms that we are kind of infecting them with by refusing to allow humanity. So if we could say that in day-to-day, people need to eat and sleep and go to the bathroom, and they don't always have to be exciting and perfect and good, and maybe as they haven't taken care of those things, they can become kind of difficult. What that means for us is that we're becoming an angel in this world, literally, when we're able to exchange life force via breath with the source, like mouth to mouth. Like, I'm getting my life to share. I'm not going to hold on to it and say, you're not worthy of life. Like, we get to be the punisher or the innocence. If we're the innocence, everyone gets to be innocent with us. If they're not innocent because they keep hurting us, that in their innocence, we have to recognize that they can't control themselves. And we cannot be around them and then blame them. We have to be able to handle it on our own. That's releasing the karma. So karma is not a punishment. Again, karma is a chance to purify that shell or that separation. In Hebrew, we call it klipa. Klipa is a shell, or like what makes something into an empty vessel. Like, you're just good for calculating stuff. You're not actually fun to travel with. That's not someone you really want to go on vacation with. You're using them, for example. So if you're receiving breath of life and they are, and you could change, then they can change. If you could be innocent and learn more about yourself rather than just being the one who does such and such, then we're like a luminary. We're the infinite light shining through ourselves to everyone, and they can also shine their light for us, much more than whatever we're kind of compartmentalizing them as or projecting or needing. So this is actually like a big thing about repentance and rectification. By literally, the theme is to embrace imperfections and ignorance. And our own ignorance is when we didn't know better. And our own imperfection is when we could not control the energy. And that's like the power coming. We have to surrender and say, I'm not the most in control. I want to get the highest level of self-control, which really is innocence and love. So I'm not reacting. So I'm actually able to tolerate. We need these precepts. And finally, I want to share something that's a big deal for me. I'm having a lot of regrets I'm not having, but this one, when I wrote this years ago, recently I was having a lot of regrets about how I was being very controlling from an insecure place and not a trustworthy place, not a trusting place, and probably therefore within the karma talk, not trustworthy, right? Because I would, there's a constancy of affection, which has nothing to do with only touch. It's positive words, positive actions, positive conveying of judgments that warm the other and create a sense of the inner bubble, extending that they could belong in my inner bubble. And that's what gives people a family feeling, a home feeling, secure feeling, even on the journey of life with different companions. So I'm really into that right now, to continue being affectionate. Again, this doesn't mean if someone's actively harming you, you have to be able to cut the pattern, that you wouldn't want to be able to do that to others. That's the root of this. That's how we self-actualize. We become all of us. We're not saving some for that person and saving some for that person. Doesn't mean we aren't dynamic and able to change our situation, but we're not cut off from aspects of a self. This is a big one, and so I'm gonna leave it there, even though maybe it didn't seem like a lot of information, but this is huge. This takes an entire lifetime to work through and learn about in ourselves and others and in the collective, and in relationships of all kinds, relationships to objects, relationships to people, relationships to higher power, God, and any ideas about spirit guides, angels, which are not intermediaries to God, but they're like sent by God. They're messengers from God. Like that's in Judaism, we don't consider them intermediaries. We're allowed to talk to them, to talk to God on our behalf. But it doesn't mean that they replace the eternal Lord, or that we cannot access the Lord, the Creator, first being directly. We're always from that source. And all of these are also from that source. So in healing karma, you might have found that a lot of people have spirit guides and angel messengers, and they're very helpful, but we have to remember that this is all part of the source of life. Karma, good karma, or midah kneged midah with mercy. The world is able to last because of repentance. Otherwise, the world would be destroyed when it first did something wrong. For example, a person in the world did something wrong. So the whole collective, like, it would bring that pattern. So we have to remember that there is always room to heal. And that's what these messengers, angels, which in Hebrew, the word is very similar to king, or which guides you. And originally they're anointed by the priest, the king. So it's all coming back to connecting to God. We're connecting to the source of life when we heal our karma. And in Hebrew, one last thing I'll say is that we call it Gilgul, cycle. So the cycle doesn't stop, right? We even say there's Gilgul of incarnations. So Gilgul has even become to mean, the Galgal is like the constant cycle, and Gilgul is like the becoming in a body, a new version of the soul that, not a new version of the soul, a new version of the karma, and new seeds, desires, but they, let me back up for a second. We experience being incarnated as having, as just mentioned, a karma with seeds already planted. However, it can be cross-lifetime. In other words, the Gilgul, that means the cycle hasn't completed. It hasn't reached rectification. We haven't stopped. We haven't completed that circuit. So in order to become one and self-actualize, we're granted in mercy another lifetime in a, obviously, new body from a baby to whenever that period ends. And this is all a lot of like good ways to sort of handle karma when it feels like, could it be that it's out of our control? No, we have the power to make choices. Our karma is we're co-authoring. And everything's relevant. Everything's revelatory. Your karma is your personal inner bubble. There is nobody outside of you that is the source of your life, and there is nobody outside of you that can change your karma. That's really the main thing I'm trying to sort of get to, so that you recognize there's no shell outside that's preventing you from your karma, and you're not stuck in a shell that you can't get out and make a change of your karma. Self-actualization is actually being free and appreciating and enjoying and getting control from the patterns and the seeds, the desires, the needs and the suffering, the wounds.